This is a panel of former companies that have been on stage here. You're still alive, you're still growing. That's a good thing. So that's really important. All of them are built in Europe. We also have an investor on stage operating in Europe. And I'd like to kick off by asking you your input on, let's say, this following statement. When you're building a company in Europe, it's especially in a regulated space, Europe is either the hardest place in the world to build a technology company, especially in a regulated space, or the most defensible one in which to build one. And maybe let's start from you, Veselina, from the investor's perspective.
Well, hi everyone. This is Veselina from 11 Ventures. Just a brief introduction. Do you hear me well? Yeah. We are an early stage investor. We invest in Europe, tech startups, pre-seed, seed, later seed stage. So up to your question, it could be both in my view, because if a startup manages somehow to overcome the regulatory burden in Europe, this means that they already have the kind of operational resilience and maturity, in fact, to be able to grow and scale even beyond Europe. So if they fight the European regulatory fire, this is already a defensible mode, I would say.
Rohit?
Yeah, thanks. Name's Rohit from Synapse. I think I wouldn't necessarily completely agree, but I think Europe is the best place to build. And even more, the Central Eastern Europe is a better place to build, only because a startup hardened in the fires of regulations of Europe can't thrive anywhere. That's the simple fact. We experience it every day.
Hello. So I'm Kaido, CEO of Mifunda. So very shortly about Mifunda. Mifunda is a data solution standardizing credit information in Europe and passporting it between countries. And its company is heavily financed by European Commission directly. And this industry, it's not just a technical engineering that you're calling to this credit bureau, let's say Bureau the Credit in Romania, Schufa in Germany, calling, hey, please give me your API and I'm doing this technical integration. No. Technical engineering is very simple. It's way more legal engineering. It's way more trust building. So you asked regarding Europe versus other regions, and of course, Europe is extremely difficult to build any technology which is strongly related to regulatory side, because there are 27 different jurisdictions. Also, politicians are constantly talking that we have one single market, we have unified legislation, EU directives, etc. But reality is different. In reality, there are 27 different countries. But I think the important point was inside your question. Yes, it takes a lot of efforts in the beginning to build it, but it's also highly defensible, because anyone else who wants to do the same, they have to spend a lot of energy, a lot of time as well, and good luck.
Hey everyone, my name is Andreas Visi. I'm the CEO and founder of Bookkeepy. We do end-to-end online company registration and outsourced accounting services. And we are present in Hungary, Romania, Ireland, and Spain. So we have some insight into like how different and how similar those countries are. And I think I'm pretty much going to pick up where Kaido left off, is that like if you're going to a new country and if you're going knees deep into a regulated area and you need to like deeply localize, it's going to be extremely difficult. So this is why we ourselves decided just to like stay on the surface and understand how to do sales and marketing and contracting of accounting services, but I would never dare myself to get into like localizing accounting software in between countries. I think that would be very, very difficult.
Okay, so building in Europe means taking the complicated road, but at the end of the way, you're in a much better position than when you're coming from, let's say, other region and wanting to go into Europe. Let's go the other way around. From the last time you went and you came here to UNCHAIN, what's the one thing that changed either in your business or in your perspective as a VC, as an investor in this space, that you didn't predict would be happening?
In fact, this is my first time at UNCHAIN, which is not very good thing. I realize it today.
Let's focus then on the last 12 months, something that you didn't predict.
Well, frankly speaking, we didn't predict the exact speed in which the whole thing around the AI adoption will happen. And what I even discussed today with some of the participants is that it happens very rarely that with the next release of the Anthropic or, Claude, let's say, the majority of our pipeline gets wiped out, which means that the speed is like phenomenal out there, the speed of development of the models, and at the same time, the speed in which the founders needs to react and to build even much faster than what happens out there. So that we expected it, but we didn't expect the speed in which it will develop.
From my perspective, we build deterministic AI models, right? And our bet was very contrarian to large language models from day one. We still say LLMs suck and they don't scale. I know she doesn't agree, but that's a conversation for other day. What changed is the fact that how the market has turned since the day one. Like 3 years ago when I stood on stage and won the prize, AI was in its nascent stages. Everybody was interested, was talking about it. A year later, ChatGPT happened to the world. And then after that, things moved rapidly. But interestingly, the paradigm that deterministic AI for regulated industries remains the stronghold is true. So it was a roller coaster ride, and the grit has helped us succeed.
Continuing with AI topic, of course, it's extremely hot. It's hype in one hand as well. What we see, we are a bit skeptic, or not skeptic. It's a wrong word. I would say cautious in that sense. And why? Because in Mifunda we are processing really sensitive data. So private persons, credit history, all these items. So it's extremely strongly regulated, and it's critical who is processing, how is it processed, who is getting this information, etc. And even more, who are the customers at Mifunda? They are banks, again, regulated institutions, and also conservative institutions. And in some cases, banks have even asked black and white in a contract that no AI. So if a bank is requesting no AI, then you have to follow it. And then there's also FSA, supervision authority, coming and checking that you are doing it properly. So of course we are using AI, but in limited context, not to process personal, private, sensitive information.
And what has changed in the past, let's say, or since the last time you came to UNCHAIN that you didn't predict in your business?
At first, I need to reveal, I didn't win the competition last year. It was my colleague who was pitching very well, and that's probably the reason I'm here this year. If you're asking what has changed, what we couldn't predict, nothing what we couldn't predict, but of course 1 year is a long period for any startup, any scale up, and in our case the most important achievement was gaining this critical mass of credit bureaus involved in our infrastructure. Currently we are covering 20 countries in Europe and 70% of population, so any credit institution from their point of view, it means 70% probability that you can find the credit data of your foreign customers. Or from Romanian point of view, it means that there are a lot of Romanian people living outside of Romania or moving between Romania or any other country. Then 70% probability that you can collect this data and you can do educated credit decisions.
So you say it's a bit of an acceleration maybe of your coverage?
Yes, definitely, because in this industry, critical mass matters. Each single country is just a tiny fraction. But if to sum up all these tiny fractions, that's a massive.
So I think ever since I left last year's UNCHAIN's finals, I think right away after that, like Google's AI overview feature came on board and online, and we as like companies selling services online, we heavily relied on educational content and SEO, and our online traffic just halved over like 1.5 months, and we were like terrified what this is going to like result in. And we have seen like zero decline in terms of actual conversions and contracts that we have made. And like this is how it was for about like 3 to 4 months. And after that, our growth pace has doubled. So it did not only like return, but the conversions actually doubled. So it seems like something bad happened without actually hitting our bottom line too bad. And then something like return, maybe like there are more people actually looking for AI-based solutions and coming more online, even in case of traditionally offline services. That's like two things that I was like kind of expecting, just not to that magnitude.
I want to go back a bit to the fact that you're building in Europe. You touch data, you interact with a lot of entities. How relevant, and this is a question first for the founders, how relevant is for you this concept of EU data sovereignty and the idea of building in Europe with European infrastructure? How relevant is it for you in these let's say days we're living?
So this, to me, like we're not deeply concerned in that matter yet, but I think it's going to be like of increasing importance. It really reminds me of how it was when like cloud solutions came online, and you initially you're using like any kind of cloud and you could store data anywhere. Then you had to make sure like you're using European data center, and then like everybody was happy. It's like sorted. Ideally, it's sorted. But I think what has changed in the last like 3 to 5 years, and more like in the last 2, is that like previously I think we were heading more towards like globalization and like world peace kind of stuff. And now like it's not really that much. It's getting more segregated. I think the international environment is becoming a bit more hostile. So it's not like everybody would just want to like tick a box of compliance, but this can actually become of like strategic importance if like, for example, the US and the EU doesn't want to cooperate. So I guess this is going to be a bit more ugly and a bit more important in the coming couple of years.
In Mifunda, of course, we are keeping all the data in the EU servers, but still at the current moment we're using US clouds, which are here in the EU. But of course, it's dependent on the legislation and pressure on the regulatory side. If the direction is there, it should be controlled by EU institutions. Of course, we are changing, simple as that. But much stronger connection to this EU data sovereignty in case of Mifunda is that why Mifunda was also financed by the European Commission is to build European own champion in the credit data. Because if you're looking who are these global champions currently in the credit data, they're American companies like in technology in general, there are Google, Amazon, Meta, etc. But same about credit data, Equifax, Experian, large American corporations and EU own corporations are missing or very fragmented in Europe, and the main problem of Europe is fragmentation, but and it's coming from a history and this cultural and nations part what we have. So just so many small nations, and so we need to find a way how to work together and to be like a one single body in that sense.
Okay, your question was what do we think about sovereignty, right? So I want to speak from Synapse's perspective. I think in general the Europeans should demand sovereignty, not just data sovereignty, but also AI sovereignty. It's to protect the citizens of Europe. And I think building on sovereign infrastructure is very important. But at the same time, definition of sovereignty is important, right? A lot of people do data sovereignty by saying, I have the AWS sovereign cloud in Europe, and therefore I'm sovereign. That's BS. right? So data sovereignty is not a permission to use something which is just waiting to be revoked by the US Cloud Act. I think data sovereignty or AI sovereignty is ultimate control over who can take things away from you. And if you have the control to use it, run it without being interrupted. And that's going to be the cornerstone of everything in the future. 65% of the countries around the world have sovereignty in their laws. It's a matter of time before we see that here in Europe or other places where we do business.
Okay, I want to turn a bit to the investor's perspective. What do you currently hear or look at when you hear in a pitch from a, let's say, a CAE founder or an EU founder saying, we're EU native, we're GDPR first, we're compliant, especially in the early stages?
Yeah, I hear it very often, frankly speaking. We invest in tech companies, but we also invest in some edge cases, like, for example, Doyo's companies. And it's very interesting to see the different perspectives because we're talking here about sovereignty. I wanted to give you just another angle. Data is one thing, and yes, we also have an investment in a company that works with Google Cloud. They're like a provider, reseller. So it's not a bad thing, right? Still, the majority of the enterprises are relying on AWS, especially in fintech space. So it's becoming a thing, but we are not ready to act in a practical way against it, right? So still the majority of the companies out there use the American infrastructure. But the other angle is in the deep tech companies. For example, when we talk about Doyos, aerospace, etc., this is the real case, in my view. In our portfolio, we have the first cargo drone in the world. This is Dronomics. This is the first European and the only European case for unmanned cargo drone that can work in different cases, like commercial flights and dual use. And this is the real sovereignty when it comes to, being defensible in the sense on the geopolitical situation that is happening nowadays.
But from a financial perspective, moving a bit to the, let's say, raising fund side. Traditionally, and again, a question for all, we can start from you, Veselina. Has it become easier to raise more capital or raise it easier in Europe as it is compared to the US? Are we still lagging behind? Do you see some progress in this space? And then we'll also get the input from the founders, from the trenches.
Yeah, there are different dynamics happening nowadays when it comes to fundraising. So far, the traditional path was pre-seed, seed, Series E, Series B, Series D, etc. Nowadays, with the vast development of the technologies and AI, ideas could be shipped in hours, frankly speaking. So what we are seeing across our portfolio, but in other companies as well, is that they can achieve more with less capital, which means that they could become profitable only with their seed investing. And after that, instead of chasing some American investors, let's say for huge Series A rounds, they can only get the growth money, and growth money is available in Europe. So the bottom line is nowadays the founders can achieve more with less. Talking in a practical way, what I see across the portfolio is that there are layoffs of people, engineers, sales guys, etc., because of AI, because they are automating anything. Of course, they do. They use a lot of tokens, as we discussed. That's there, but it's still way cheaper than having like tens of people being on payroll. So there is really interesting dynamics that is happening, and we are about to see how it will evolve.
As usual, I have an explosive view on that. I think European investors suck. Sorry. They continue to ask for 5-year plans and are extremely reluctant on contrarian takes on bigger bets. It's frankly, I was an investor, so I I can speak from as freely as I am. Whereas, look, we're raising our seed round 3 million. I've talked to a bunch of European investors, and I know exactly the dance they put me through. Right? I have 2 term sheets from the US in my 1-week trip last week to Salt Lake City. Do I need to say more?
My experience is pretty the same. So I think European investors should have way more courage. That this is what is needed actually in risk investments. You need to have a courage. Not you cannot be like a banker. They have very different institutions. In case of Mifundo, we have one thing different. As we are fixing a European problem, then we see that the best match is in Europe. American investors just don't understand that specifics. They don't understand Europe. They don't understand EU. They don't understand this complexity. So simple as that.
Yeah.
I think my last memories when it comes to fundraising was like from 1.5 years ago when we were like raising for the last time. And we were negotiating with like European/Hungarian VCs. And, I thought it went reasonably well until I met like a strategic investor with whom we spoke, I think, twice or maybe thrice. And then instead of like going ahead with 3 separate VCs in a conglomerate, they just like took the entire round. And even like they bought out the other VCs in there. So like decision making and like knowing what you need, knowing where your synergies are, where your strengths are, is most definitely something that can help startups. And I know it's not like a traditional European VC versus US VC story, but it's also kind of like a shade of gray, I believe, on like how lengthy these processes can become and how like risk avoidance can lengthen the story until you're not going to actually go ahead with the company.
Okay, so we need a bit more courage on both sides. Maybe we need a bit more capital allocated and maybe more concentrated. Okay, topics to think about until next year. I want to wrap up this panel with one quick question, and maybe on the let's finish on the more optimistic side. We're gonna have some companies that are gonna come on stage to get their prizes for this year. Give me one idea, one piece of advice you would give to them, and maybe for the very short, like 2 sentences, one phrase, and for the founders, maybe something you wish someone had told you at the moment when you came on stage to get a prize here or in another contest that you've been a part of. Maybe let's start from Anders this time.
I think, as everybody said, building became much easier. I believe what is still a difficult thing to do is like attracting paying customers en masse in a repeatable and LTV CAC positive way. So I would say, yeah, build good stuff, but do not forget to like put that on the market in a sustainable way.
Very short advice. Be ambitious and just enjoy the ride.
I would say what you set out to do might not always become true. Listen to the market, learn to pivot, be fast and nimble. It's going to be a wonderful journey. So enjoy it.
Be bold and ambitious. This is what I can say.
Okay, cool. I think this is a good segue to the prizes. Thank you very much for your time on stage, and thank you for having this